everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about my writing process and how you can start and actually finish a book. As a beginning author, I was a huge pantser. I pretty much would just jump right into a story, just start writing random scenes. And I have since realized that that does not work for me. When you're pantsing, you really end up with scenes that feel entirely disconnected. They're not leading you towards the end. Maybe you don't even have an end in mind, but when you do think of one, all of these random scenes don't connect together and they're not actually leading you to that ending point. So that's why we're going to talk about actually plotting things out today as part of my writing process. I have been working on this novel that I'm currently working on now since I was in about, I think, 7th grade. So it has been... For the record, I am 20 years old. I was about 12 then, so it's been 8 years. I just can't do math. But anyway, my point was I had so many characters and ideas then that I have completely cut out of my book since starting to plan because they really just had no place in the book. They weren't moving the plot forward in any way. They weren't enhancing my characters. They weren't adding any emotional depth. So they really didn't serve any purpose, and since I was pantsing, I wasn't realizing that. So moving on, let's get into it. So you had this idea, this tiny little seedling of a story. It could be a character. You could have a character in mind and you're like, yes, I really want to do something with this character. It could be a scene idea. Maybe you don't have any characters yet. You're starting out with a really minor plot idea. It could simply be a setting. Maybe there's somewhere that you're like, oh my gosh, that is really cool. I should write a story with that. Whatever you have, you can make a story out of that. So if you have a character, write everything down that you know about this person. What do they want? What are their goals in life? Who are they? What makes them them? And then from there, you can kind of move on and put them into a situation or a setting of your choice. Now, say you're starting with a scene idea. Now, what you're going to want to do is add characters. What is happening in that specific scene? How are they interacting? What do those characters add to that scene? Essentially, all you are doing in this step is brainstorming. You're getting ideas out there. That does not necessarily mean whatever we're putting down in this step is going to be included in the story. It doesn't mean it's going to be important later on. But the thing that is important right now is that you are getting ideas out and putting them down onto a piece of paper. I like to put them all in a Google Doc so I don't forget them, even if you don't end up using them. The fact that you are putting those ideas out there will help spring other ideas into mind that you may actually use for the story. Now, if you're saying, Paige, I just don't have any ideas. I have this character, I have this scene, I don't know what to do with it. Pinterest. Pinterest is my absolute beloved for this, making mood boards or Pinterest boards for this tiny little idea that you have. Pinterest really is an incredible tool. This is my board for my current project. I talked about this in my last video. It is a fantasy novel following a necromancer, but Pinterest is an amazing tool. You can put all of these pictures, quotes, things that just remind you of your story in here, and you're not going to lose them because you're saving them in a board. All of these things together might spring up new scene ideas. They might spring up new characters, and it really just gets your brain flowing. I have learned that it helps so much to romanticize the living hell out of whatever story you are working on. Make playlists, make Pinterest boards, make things that make you want to write your book. Surround yourself with things that inspire you. I also want to add, if you are looking for character names, Nameberry is my favorite for this. They have like your typical names, like the most popular names, but you can also look into like unique names, and they do have some different stuff in there, as you can see. You can code to like specific like vibes that you're looking for, and it is all on there. So I would definitely recommend using Nameberry if you're looking for character names. Okay, so we are going to assume now that you have written down all of these things in a document, on a piece of paper. Maybe you've got some sticky notes laying around. We're going to assume that whatever you are using, you have some discombobulated ideas all over the place. So here is what I do next. I have this cutesy little setup here. I have my cork board with my sticky notes, and I'm going to kind of explain to you guys how I use this to organize my scenes. So because I am very much a visual person, I write down these ideas on sticky notes and I put them on my cork board. This is also really convenient because you can pick things up and move them around if you need to work around scenes if you think of an idea that can go between scenes. But this helps me a lot because I can say, okay, I have this idea right here. I have this idea here. Now I need to figure out how I get from point A to point B. And these sticky notes kind of help me to visualize that. But essentially this step is just organizing the ideas that I have. Typically at this point I'm not filling in gaps, but I am putting together the scenes that I have and making a timeline with them essentially, because it helps me see everything laid out. And then later on I can figure out how to fill in the gaps, how to get from point A to that point B. You could also use this method to lay out like your characters. You could take a sticky note and say, this is my character Ella, and Ella really likes puppies and her favorite color is blue, or you know, just important information about those characters so that you're not forgetting or making mistakes throughout the story, making like little discrepancies here and there that readers might catch. You can do the same for settings, like this is the kingdom of blank. People use this specifically in this kingdom. Their currency is this. This is what the geography is like. This is just sort of the place to keep track of the things that you are going to be using in the story. So that second step there is really just an abbreviated version of my step 3, but I do think that step is important to me because it helps me in getting organized before I actually set up my chapters. So step 3 is setting up a chapter outline. So I'm going to show you my document here in just a second, but basically what I do is I put chapter numbers on one side, and then on the other side I'll write down what is going to be happening in that chapter. I might write down who's in the chapter, where the chapter takes place, just basically what needs to happen within the constraints of that chapter before moving on to the next. So this is going to be my document. I'm not going to show you too much because I don't want to spoil my book, but essentially, as I said, we have chapter numbers on one side, and then we have like the description of the chapter on the other side, so I know what is going to be happening. So some of you might be thinking, okay, well, didn't we just basically do that in step 2? Like, why do I have to do this again? And the short answer is that you don't have to. Again, as I said in the beginning of the video, I tried to kind of pants my way through things when I was first starting this novel, and it did not work out for me at all. So if you are someone that can say, hey, I have these scenes organized enough that I can jump right in and I can figure things out as I go between scenes, that is totally okay. Sure, jump from step 2 and go right into the book. That is totally fine if that's more your style. But for me, it makes things so much easier to be able to see laid out step by step. Hey, this is exactly what I need to write for chapter 1. This is what I need to write for chapter 2. And it really takes the stress out of writing for me, because then I'm not worried about, oh my gosh, where am I going next? I don't know. But I do know because I plotted it all out beforehand. So now that we have this chapter outline, we're able to go right into the book. If you have this outline and you're looking at it like, yeah, I can start from chapter 1 and just keep going, that's great, awesome, you can go right in order. But if you're someone who, like me, is a little bit of a mood writer, I will typically pick a scene that I'm like, yeah, that sounds really interesting, I can write that right now. And then I won't have to worry about being like, oh, well, I don't know if it's going to affect this and this, but I already do know that because I plotted out everything that I already need to know. So I can write the scenes out of order because I know everything that's going to happen and everything that has happened. Now this is the hard part because you do have to sit down and write. What helps me a lot is finding somewhere with no distractions, having a clean space, making sure if you have a desk it is a nice clean area. Sometimes putting on some light music, something that's not going to distract you too much, can help a lot as well. And I want to add also that this is a first draft. This does not have to be the most perfect, clean, polished writing you've ever seen right now. It can be a steaming pile of garbage as long as it's written, because you can make edits to something that you have written. You can't edit something that's not there. You're probably going to end up with little notes in parentheses saying like, hey, come back and write this, or insert character name, or write this and this because I don't want to write it right now. That's a problem for later me. Honestly, you are probably going to add those notes, and that's okay because it's just a first draft. Again, it does not have to be perfect. That's what the editing process is for, and we're just in drafting right now. Really give yourself some grace for this step because writing a novel is not for the week. It is not easy. You could be writing 1,000 words in a day. You could be writing 0 words in a day. And you know what? That's okay, because we all need breaks. We all have off days. And that's all right. It's all part of the process. As long as you are dedicating yourself to this project, as long as sometime at some point in the future you are working on it, you're doing great. Even 2 sentences is progress. So consider that a win. But really the only tip I can give you guys for this step is to keep plugging along. There is no easy way around it. Novels are quite a feat, to be completely honest. It just requires dedication. Okay, so for this next step, we're going to assume that you have a written manuscript, your draft 1 is completed. So the next step is going to be basic edits from the author themselves. So in this step, what I essentially do is I go back through, I find those little notes that I left myself, like insert this here, write this here, and I go back and I fill those things in. I take sentences that might sound clunky or wrong and I start rewriting them. I take things that just maybe don't belong and I either rewrite or I cut things that don't need to be there anymore. So this is eventually going to become my draft 2 of the novel, where I have done like basic edits for myself. If I see mistakes that I made, I fix them. If I see a problem with a scene or some dialogue, I go back and fix it. I go back and beef up my sentences so they don't sound quite so simple anymore. So this is the stage where we're taking that crappy first draft and we're making her shine. That still doesn't mean that this draft is going to be perfect, because so many authors write draft after draft after draft to get this thing to shine, not even mentioning going through rounds and rounds of editors. So at this point, your book is not going to look like a published novel that has been polished completely. And keep in mind, as you are drafting, I typically like to go back to that brainstorm document, or I guess better called like the chapter outline, to remember what I'm going for, like what I want to get out of this story. What do I want readers to take out of this? Who do I want them to root for? Those kind of things. So that way you can remember what you started with and where you want to go with your story. I will say I have had so many drafts of this novel by now, and there have been a few times where I have completely scrapped it because I look back and I see where I want to go and I'm not getting there. So I have to start again. And frankly, now that I have started again, everything looks so much better. I'm so much happier with it. So it is okay if you have to start over. Sometimes it's just part of the process. I'm not gonna go super in-depth into like the editing process, beta readers, all that good kind of stuff. I just wanted to go over my basic steps to starting and writing the drafting of the book. So just keep in mind, as you are drafting, you're trying to figure out what you want your story to tell. You're making basic edits in these. You're making sure that the story is what you want it to be. So for a quick recap, we have the basic idea of a story. We then have a brainstorm document. We have my little sticky note corkboard idea to arrange ideas. Then we go to a chapter outline. From the chapter outline, we go into first draft. And from first draft, you go into many drafts beyond. If you guys want any more in-depth videos on any of these steps, let me know, comment below, and I will get on that right away. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you tune in to the next video. Bye!